Hi, I'm Chris Allen, and I am the author of Otherworld Ecstatic Witchcraft for the Spirits of the Land. And today I wanted to talk about um, the spirits of the other world and why it's important and why magical people, shamans, witches have been doing it for thousands and thousands of years, and why it's important to do it right now. So the first thing I want to talk about is what is the other world itself. So the other world, some people call it the astral plane. Some people call it the like the spirit world. And in my experience and my tra- tradition, I come from a traditional witchcraft uh, uh, background. In the other world is the place that's ethereal. Some people say like in between the worlds, but it's the place that's in between the physical world and the astral and the spiritual world. It's the place of fairies. It's the place of elves and dragons, all types of of plants and spirits, animal spirits. Basically, every single thing that's alive but doesn't necessarily have a physical body. Like, have you ever been walking in the woods or even the beach or even in a park and you're all by yourself, but it still feels alive. It feels like there's something there. And you know it's not the animals, but it isn't like a ghost or anything, but it just seems like the spirits of the earth. Well, that's part of the other world. And I will say in a natural environment, I think the other world bleeds into our world a little bit more clearly. However, even in your home, even in the city, the other world certainly bleeds into the physical plane, but it bleeds into I think it bleeds into our world a little better. Oh, before I forget, I wanted to let you guys know that feel free to ask me questions throughout the talk at any time. I really enjoy engagement and having those conversations. So please feel free to ask me questions. You can ask me anything at all, even if it's a little bit off topic. I'm okay with it too. Um, but back to the spirits of the other world. So, what? Who are the spirits of the other world? I'm going to tell you. It depends upon the tradition. So, in my experience and my training, I have a few things. I have a heathen background. I also have a British Welsh a Celtic background, but I'm also part Cherokee, and I study with the Cherokee, Apache, and the Lakota. So I also have a Native American background about how the other world influences us. And one of the things that I've always found intriguing is that every single culture, every single pre-Christian culture believes in some type of other world or spiritual plane like that. That's very close to ours. So the spirits, though, like the ones that I work with, of course, the fairies I work with, and we'll go into a bit more detail in a second, but the elves um, and, and nature spirits, um, and the Native American uh, community, we are very big on animal spirits, animal guides, animal helpers, and plant spirits and plant helpers and things like that. I do know that yes, that's common in all in the like everywhere around the world, but what I what I study mostly is the Native American spiritual view of animal spirits and things like that. So, one of the things about the other world that I find fascinating is that in my tradition we have. a belief that the life force of the earth, the energy that makes the trees grow and gives us warmth and helps change the seasons and helps the crops grow and things like that, that energy comes from the other world. And how I think about it is, in magical practice, all energy, everything at first comes from spirit, right? And then it goes down to the mental plane, and then the astral plane, and then the etheric plane, and then the physical plane. But how we see the life force go from spirit to the physical plane is as it goes down uh, the spiritual planes, it becomes more denser and more denser and more alive. I mean, everything's alive, but from a human point of view. So it becomes more denser, and then in the other world, the world of the fairies and the elves, and that energy becomes more of a life force, how we see it from a human point of view. So the other world gives us that energy. Um, and I think there's a whole lot of spirits involved in that. In fact, in my book, Otherworld, when I talk about a dragon energy and dragon magic, and I believe the golden dragon's treasure is actually a metaphor for the golden life force of the other world. That energy that fuels us, and we know, and like every spiritual teacher in the world says, when you're doing magic, especially outside, connect to the energy of a nature, and that will fuel your magic. Well, that's the energy of another world, and I think that's a metaphor for the dragon's treasure. I do talk about that more in the book, but just as we're talking about the spirits, um, keep all those uh, keep all those things in mind. Um, so let's talk about fairies first, because that's everyone's go-to, and I'm sure there's other authors on here talking about fairies as well. And one of the beautiful things about having different authors and different teachers that talk about the same thing, like fairies, is because you get a different point of view. It's kind of like when you see a piece of art, you know, at first you see the whole thing, and then you start to see the little details and things, like, oh, you see a tree, and then you see the sky, and then you see all that. Well, that's how I think about having different authors and speakers and teachers that talk about the same thing. It gives you more depth and different points of views and different experiences. Okay, so fairies. One of the big things that I like to do is I like to dispel mythologies that our modern people have created. One of the things that in all the lore that I've seen, and all the lore and mythology I've seen, is that so the fairies are not these little teeny tiny winged uh, creatures. In fact, fairies and elves are more akin to very large spiritual beings. So the closest I've seen on like movies and TV is like Lord of the Rings. Basically, that was a pretty good depiction of how fairies and elves appear, because they're tall, majestic, and magical. Throughout the book, Otherworld, I kind of use fairy and elf interchangeably, sort of. I mean, they each have their own mythologies and folklore and things like that, but they're very similar. I think of them as cousins. So just like how the Celts are very similar to the heathens in genetic makeup, they're different, but they have similarities. So no, so the fairies and the elves are not teeny tiny creatures. That came from Victorian times, I will say. The other thing about that is that during the Middle Ages in both European countries and in Britain, um, all spirits were called fairy. Like everything was called fairies. So if you were talking about a plant spirit or an actual fairy, or you were talking about a spirit of a lake or a tree or whatever, it was all called fairy. So I can see how it became confusing, but think of it this way. I try to give proper respects to other world spirits. So I try to recognize that an actual fairy is different than a plant spirit. They're not the same. And and as far as I'm aware, the only similarity that I can see that they have is that they're both fond of nature and they're both more or less in spirit form. Um, But why is it important to work with fairies and elves and things like that? Um, for me and in my other books, as I have books about the ancestors, about the gods and things like that, I think if we're going to be magical people, that we have to realize that humans are just part of the grand scheme of the universe, and we have to quit putting ourselves above spirits. Yes, it's true. Being in a physical body, we do have more influence on the physical plane. Absolutely. But as you know, the physical plane is only one a part of the whole universe. So I think we need to have a relationship and a connection with the fairies, with the elves, with the gods, and with their ancestors. I have found that having these relationships with the spirits is very therapeutic. It's very healing, especially, for example, whenever you are working with the fairies and the elves or plant spirits, you naturally want to take care of yourself. You want to take care of the earth. You want to take care of other people, simply by learning to have a relationship with another spiritual being, teaches you how to have an open heart. It teaches you how to be more compassionate, to be more open minded. And when we have those things, as I see it as a form of therapy. It's a form of self healing and things like that. And I will say, one of my favorite things about having fairy and elvish teachers and helpers and things like that is that they teach us all about healing. They teach us how to heal ourselves. They teach us how to heal the earth. They teach us how to do better spells and magic and things like that. For myself, just like I said, I try to have an open heart. And so when I approach the fairies, when I approach all spirits, I have an open heart because that's how you create a friendship, right? Like if I meet a person and I don't have an open heart, it's really hard to be friends, right? And if you're my friend, we're going to be like, hey, I really enjoy Chris's company. If he needs some help, I'm happy to help him. And if I need help, I'm going to ask his help. And that's how you create a friendship. And that's how I approach the spirits. I mean, that's how I approach all spirits, but especially the fairies and elves and things like that. Um, I want to talk about um, like UPGs and like unverified spiritual ghosts and things like that with the fairies and things like that. One of the first things is that yes, your experiences like in the astral, or if you're having a guided visualization or a meditation or shamanic journey, your experiences are very valid with those spirits. So if they tell you something, it's very true for you. And what that means is that sometimes there's a little bits of information, maybe stories or whatever they say is meant only for you. And where I think a lot of people get confused is if, say, I have a connection with a fairy or a fairy teacher or whatever, and that a fairy says, "Hey, I really enjoy, let's say, pork chops. I really enjoy pork chops. They really are delicious. It makes me happy." Oh, well, that's not true for that spirit, right? For that fairy, I wouldn't will go online and say, "Okay, everybody, change the plans. All fairies want pork chops. No more bread and honey. Only pork chops." Well, for that information was meant only for me, and to be a little even more detailed about it, that communication from that fairy also what depends on my spiritual connection and my in my psychic view. So maybe because I like pork chops, which I really don't, but I'm just using that as an example. But if I did because I enjoy pork chops, then that connection between me and the fairy says, "Oh, I like pork chops too. Okay, great." But that's only for me. So I wanted just to talk about that because it's just a little bit about how to work with the spirits and things like that. So, one of the things uh, I want to talk about with the elves and the fairies, since they are two different beings, but in my practice, in my research and things, they're very similar. They're very similar. So, like, they both don't like iron. They both have a connection to nature. They both have a lot of similar qualities. Um, Interesting thing that I just think of as as kind of fascinating that I hope you'll find fascinating is that the word Alfar, which is where we get the word elf, Alfar, it's it's a believed to mean bright fog or bright mist. And I live close to Lake Michigan over here in Chicago, and so on a foggy day when the sun comes out, the fog's very bright, and so I really feel the presence of the elves. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna give offerings. I'm gonna talk to the elves because here comes the bright fog or the bright mist, and so that's part of the lore about how the elves will manifest in the physical plane. I just find that fascinating because I think we've all, even if you've been on a mountain or by fog, when the sun comes out, it's very bright. So that's just it's it's believed that's one of the ways that the elves manifest in the physical plane. Um, I think it's also important to maintain like offerings and things like that. And there's lots and lots and lots of books that tell you about some of the most common offerings to give. For myself, what I'd like to do is I'll do a shamanic journey or meditation with the spirits, and I'll say, "Hey, what do you enjoy? What do you like?" And sometimes it is, "I like bread, milk, and honey." Great. So other times it's, "Oh, I enjoy dark chocolate." Or they may say, "I've had donuts before. I want that." So whatever they say, give them what they like. And what I usually do if it's a nice day outside, I will leave offerings for the spirits and a bowl outside. Oh, one of the things you have to remember is fairies and elves are very fond of shape shifting. So it's believed that sometimes if, say, a squirrel or a bird, a raccoon, or a fox or something eats that offering, that it could be maybe a fairy or elf who shapeshifted into animal form to enjoy the offering. But sometimes it isn't them, and sometimes I think the animal goes and just say, "Hey, I smell food. I'm gonna eat it," and I think that's completely fine. Remember to make sure that if you're gonna leave offerings for the spirits outside, that is animal friendly. And even though yes, bread is a very common offering, very, 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 very common, because at the time, this is probably what they had, but bread isn't the really so great for animals. So try to give offerings that are healthy for animals. So there's a question from the audience. It says, has a spirit ever requested something you didn't would not want to give them? So here's my rule about that. Never ever uh, promise the spirits, whoever they are, even a god, ancestors, anything. You can ever promise anything that you cannot or don't feel comfortable giving. So, for example, if I had a spirit say, I want you to give me $1,000. Well, I can't afford that. I would be broke and destitute. So I'm not giving that offering. If they said to give animal sacrifice, now, in some cultures, they do animal sacrifice or chicken sacrifice, things like that. I'm not a part of those cultures, so I will never say if that's good or bad or otherwise. That's their culture, and me, what I'm comfortable with. I'm not comfortable with harming anything at all. So if I have a spirit that says, "Hey, I want you to do an animal sacrifice," I'm going to say, "I'm so sorry, I'm not comfortable doing that. What other offering can I give you?" You know, I am comfortable with going to the store and cooking up a chicken and giving them some like delicious fried chicken. I'm very comfortable doing that. As a caveat to that, um, there is some discussion of what's the difference between sacrificing a chicken to a spirit or going to the store and giving them a chicken breast. What's the difference? There is no difference. There's not. There's no difference. It's the same thing. However, I'm not a butcher and I live in the city, and it would be a really big um, mess in my kitchen to have. No, I'm not doing that. I can barely cook, much less do all that. But do what's comfortable for you. Okay. I want to talk about and other spirits of the other world, like let's talk about dragons because everyone uh, it's interesting. I'm finding and in different Facebook groups and conversations and books, different people have a different view of dragons and what they are and things like that. I've seen some people like, yeah, dragon everything, dragons are awesome, and then I've seen other people like, yeah, dragons are fake. Well, I look at it this way: if we can tune into the ancient pagan uh, gods and fairies and the elves, why can't there be dragons? And how I was trained in traditional witchcraft is what dragon energy actually means is the serpentine energies of the earth, like ley lines, or the energies of the cosmos, like galaxies. It's like serpentine energy lines. And is it a metaphor for just an energy line? Perhaps, but a lot of us believe in spirit consciousness and animism and things like that. So why can't energy lines have a consciousness? Why can't they? One of the things that I kind of like to educate people about is a spirit guide is not the same thing as a dragon, and dragons are not spirit guides. I think that mentality is very human centric, meaning it's about us. And remember, we are but one being in all the beings of the universe, from uh, plant spirits and planet spirits to the earth, to the stars, to the gods, to the ancestors. For only one thing in the great scheme of the universe. So I think we need to be very careful about having spirits um, be all about us. Yeah, I don't think we should be subservient in any way, shape, or form, but I do think that we need to realize it's a two-way street with things, and and dragons are not spirit guides at all. I will say the more think of it this way, they're ancient beings who are part of the physical world and of the other world. It's interesting because in some Asian countries like Japan and China, they believe that anytime you have a giant uh, rock formation, like say a mountain range or a canyon, they believe that that's the physical manifestation of a dragon. They also believe that anytime you have a meeting of two separate waterways, so like a river and the ocean, or a stream and a lake, at that point where they meet and they mix, that's where a dragon lives. Isn't that cool? And and I find it very interesting how in Asian countries, dragons, for the most part, they are happy to um, to give us wisdom, to teach us, to be with us. But a lot of times in the Lord Europe, it's different. Dragons breathe fire and destroy things like Game of Thrones. You know, um, I actually don't know this, but my theory, I have a theory. I think every author has a theory. So my theory is that in pre-Christian times, dragons were thought as very powerful beings that helped, the earth. Want to necessarily say, oh, well, they helped humanity, but they helped the earth with, life force, and different things. But I think after, when Christianity came about, everything pagan turned into the devil or a demon or something gross, scary, So we have these dragons that turned out to be scary. Um, However, if you don't have any experience with great spiritual beings and you see one, I'm sure it would be very frightening at first. Even seeing a god for the very first time, if you don't even know what's happening, like, oh, what is going on? Um, anyway, so, but the reason, well, we may tune into the dragon lines and the dragon energies, especially of the dragon energies of the earth, they can really uh, uh, they can really feel your magical workings. And dragons, if you establish a relationship with them, have an open heart and give offerings, things like that, they can teach you a lot of different things about witchcraft, about magic, about the earth, about the oceans, about the mountains, and about the stars, about anything, really. But just like with all sports, you have to establish a relationship with them, and be their friend, things like that. Um, and I talk about in the book Otherworld. I give you some ceremonies, some techniques. I teach you how to go into a trance and actually establish a relationship with the dragons and the fairies and elves and things like that. I want to move on to nature spirits and plant spirits and animal spirits and things like that. Um, you know, one of the things I was taught in my training with the Lakota people was that true healing comes from being in harmony with all things. You know, the earth, the sun, the moon, so forth, the seasons. You know, and to to heal, to find balance, or to get what you need for well-being, it's important to have a relationship with all of nature. So all the plant spirits, the rock spirits, the tree spirits, all those things. And you know, and how you do that is, again, open heart. If you don't do anything else, so say you don't do meditations or shamanic journeying, but you have compassion of nature and an open heart, the the spirits are going to see that, and they're going to want to connect with you. Okay, so when we connect with the spirits of in nature, remember that's all beings of nature. They are going to help us in our magic. So say we have an herbal tea that helps us with, say, a cough, or herbal tea that helps us sleep. When you have a relationship with those herbal spirits, not only are they going to help you with whatever going on in your body, but they're also going to help you spiritually. They're going to help you emotionally. They're going to help you mentally, and they're going to help you bring balance. Because we've all heard, or a lot of us have heard, the Native American saying of good medicine. Oh, that's good medicine. Basically, what that means is energy. It means good medicine is basically bringing the physical, emotional, and the mental body and the spiritual body into balance. That's what that means. So when we are working with the nature spirits, it helps us bring ourselves into balance. One of the easiest things, because I am a true believer of don't eat something you don't know what you're eating. um, and I mean, you can go online and just do a Google search of, oh, is this poison? um, that being said, there are some plant spirits who are healing for us, who, if we ate them, would hurt us. However, if we make a charm bag or a mojo bag, or just put it in a cloth and put it in our pocket, if we have a relationship with that plant spirits or stone, like an amethyst or a quartz or something, that's the vibration of the spirit. The vibration of that plant is going to synchronize with our aura and our energy of our bodies, and can give us healing in that way. So, a medicine bag that you hear about the Native Americans having, it's what that is. So, how I would do that is I would say I'm just having a fresh palate and I don't have any clue what herb, what tree, what thing to do, and say I need some healing, or say I need some clarification or some direction, like I'm at a loss, I'm confused, I don't know what to do, or I'm sick, or whatever. So I may take what's referred to as a spirit walk in a forest, or a park, or a beach, or whatever, and I would have the intention of, I would like to work with spirits, plant spirits, and nature spirits, who will help me heal, or who would help me find some direction. And that would just, again, open heart, open energy. I would walk through the nature, and see what calls out to me. So maybe it's a rock, maybe it's a feather, maybe a twig, maybe it's a piece of a flower, maybe it's a plant, and I would collect these things. But me being a good pagan, I'm also going to give a little offering. So maybe I bring a little jug or a bottle of water, and I give the plant or the earth or whatever some water every time I find something. Here in this country, the in the U.S., the spirits do enjoy a pinch of tobacco. That's what the nature spirits enjoy here. Um, but you can also give other herbs like mugwort, whatever. But anyway, so I would collect these things and I would put them in a bag. And what I would do is each of the items, say I found a rock, a twig, and a flower, and I would go into a meditative trance state or shamanic journey or guided visualization, and I would try to talk to these spirits and say, "Hey, I need your help with, I don't know, I get headaches. Let's just say I get headaches and I need your help with that." And they can say, "Yeah, yeah, I'll help you." And then you do that with um, each of the items, each of the spirits, and you put them in a bag. And you can put it in your pocket or wear it around your neck. I'm a massage therapist by day, so I can't really have anything around my neck and things like that. So I put things in my pocket, you know. So, but that's how the nature spirits can work with us. In turn, though, in turn, I need to help them. I need to give them offerings, absolutely, but I need to be an advocate of nature. I need to do whatever I can to preserve nature, to protect nature. So maybe that's signing petitions, maybe that's doing research and having a better understanding of how I can help and protect the the natural land in my area. You know, I can you can do that in several ways. Um, let's see here. So I want us to talk a little bit about animal spirits. So same idea that you um, will go out and have the intent of working with animal spirit. Here's the thing about working with animal spirits that they definitely have their own personality. So we all heard of stories about the trickster spirits of like the crow, the raven, the rabbit, things like that. Um, One of the things we have to be careful of that I see all the time is some people say, "Well, what's the shamanic meaning of when I saw a bird fly by?" Well, everything is connected in the universe, but not everything is profound. So what I mean is that sometimes a bird is just a bird. Sometimes it's just, "Hi, I saw a rabbit." Okay. Other times, if I go out and have the intention, if I say, "Oh man, I need to find a spirit animal to help me," or "I'm feeling sick," or "I'm feeling confused," I have a question. I need help. And you go into nature seeking guidance from the animal spirits. Same thing like the plants. Then if you see a bird fly to you or a fox cross your path, that means something. Um, in my tradition, I don't look it up in a book. I don't say, "Oh, fox means this, it means that." Well, what I do is, what does it mean to me? And what is fox trying to say to me? So, for example, if I see a fox go, "Pop, pop, pop, pop," I'm like, "Oh, okay, there's a fox. He's trying to tell me something." What I would do is I would give an offering of something that the animal enjoys. Sometimes, a simple apple or chopped up apple is great, or whatever. So the animals will eat and things. I'll sit in meditation and I'll say, "Okay, fox spirit, what are you trying to tell me?" And whatever the spirit says, and sometimes it can say, "Hey, get your act together." You need to quit making dumb decisions. Or maybe it's something a little bit more profound. It's like, oh, I'm going to start you on this path of healing. Here's how. Um, as I'm doing this, as we're having this conversation, I would like you to remember that, again, we're part of the ecosystem of the universe. So sometimes the spirits will give you this very deep, profound, life-changing information. So other times they'll just say, you need to make better decisions, and it's quite that simple. So for not everything is always so profound. If you can, though, like say you establish a relationship with an animal spirit, if you can, try to get a part of the animal or a representation of the animal. So, for example, find a feather or some fur or a claw. One thing I would never do is I would never intentionally kill an animal for animal, um, strictly for an animal piece or a part for my altar. And my Lakota training, we are taught that, when you kill an animal, you eat it. It's food, and you do it in a sacred way with like prayers and things. But then you can use the teeth, the claws, the bones, the fur in your ceremonies, you know. But anyway, but say you're the type of person who's like, you know what, I'm a vegan. That's really not my jam. I don't want to hurt anything. I don't want to eat anything. That's okay. You can get like a picture or a figurine, or I've seen people go on Amazon and just buy a little animal statue. That's their fetish. That's their connection. Just so you know, the word fetish in a Native American sense just means a representation of a spirit. That's all that means. Um, so I have a few minutes left, and I wanted to see if there's any questions from the audience at all. If there's not, that's okay. So there's a question that says, do you have specific individual fairies that you work with on a regular basis? Absolutely. I actually have a fairy healing teacher, so I'm an energy healer. I mean, it goes hand in hand with the whole massage therapy thing. Um, and so I went out into nature in my area, and I said, hey, fairies, can I get can you put me in contact with a fairy healing teacher? And they did. I found a fairy, and I talked to him, and I did all this in trance. I just, you know, even though the stories in lore says, oh, fairies often just come up to you, and I believe they do. For me, I went to a trance and things like that, and I did a guided meditation, and I met a fairy, and he was just like, "Hey, let me take you to a teacher," and we had the conversation, just like with any other teacher. I didn't just say, "You are my teacher." I said, "Hey, I'm trying to learn energy healing. Can you help me?" And then we had a long conversation. And he says, "Here's the expectation. Here's what I expect out of this student teacher relationship." And then he became a fairy teacher, and I speak with him often, almost every day, a little. I mean, we don't have spiritual class every day, but I do speak to him and give him offerings, and sometimes I'll just, sometimes the offering I give is just personal energy and life force. I'll say, okay, here's some energy, things like that. But yes, I do have specific fairies I work with, but I had to establish a relationship, and they had to agree with me and things. Um, so I have another question. Have you ever worked with a dragon who's associated with Hecate? If not, do you have a dragon spirit that you work with the most? It's so funny because Hecate is such a wonderful goddess, and I actually, she's, and I also do psychopomp work. That means I help the dead cross over to the afterlife. And so I work with her in that regard, but I don't work with her with dragons per se. So I would really encourage you to find a teacher. And there's so many Hecate teachers out there about working with dragons with Hecate. However, for myself, yes, I do have a dragon I work with. It's a spiritual dragon energy that lives in my area. And I actually have a dragon altar over here behind me, and I have a dragon statue. I have like obsidian because dragons are known to be part of the dragon, the fire energies of the earth. So I have obsidian, which is basically a type of mineral made from lava. But anyway, yes, um, I have my own um, dragon spirit. I lost my train of thought. I have my own um, dragon energy and my dragon spirit I work with. In the book, I teach you how to do that. So if you're interested in how do you establish a relationship with the dragon in your area, it's in this. It's in the book. Um, do I have a regular daily practice? Absolutely, I do. Um, I have those days I'm rushing out the doors, so I don't do my daily practice. I'm human too, but yes, I do certain prayers to all my gods and my ancestors every day without fail. I pray for my ancestors. I talk to the ancestors. With the fairies, I talk to them every day. With the elves, absolutely. With my gods, and sometimes it's got this whole like 2 hour thing of prayer and meditation. Sometimes it's like, okay, I can do this whole like I give them like smoke offerings and things. I can do the whole thing in 7 minutes, and I honor the four directions. God, my spirits, the ancestors, the dragons, all those things. I've actually gone over time. It seems like we have about 45 minutes to do that. I want to thank everyone so much for joining me. I've really enjoyed spending some time with you. Really quickly, I do have a brand new book. Speaking of psycho pomp, I have a brand new book coming out in October that's called A Guide of Spirits, a psychopomps manual for transitioning the dead to the afterlife. In this book, I talk about how to work with the ancestors, how to work with the spirits to help the dead cross over. And I also teach how to deal with hauntings and things like that. So please get this book, Otherworld, and the upcoming book, Haunt, A Guide of Spirits. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. Many blessings.